Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk a little bit about a book that I just finished called The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I don't know if you've watched recently, but I just did a vlog not that long ago while I was in Ireland, and I read The Guest List, also by Lucy Foley, and that was the first book that I had read by her, but I actually enjoyed it. I liked just the pacing of it was a big thing. I loved the descriptions of the scenery and the landscape, and the story was good as well. I liked like the interpersonal relationships and the way that it unfolded. But I'd also heard really good things about another book she wrote called The Hunting Party, so I did end up getting it, and I think that I like this one better. It is a very similar format to The Guest List. It's got like point of view chapters. It goes back and forth between the present where they've like found the body and everything, and then it goes back to like the few days leading up to that. And I really like that format because I think that it keeps the pacing really nice. Again, similar to The Guest List, you actually don't know right away even who's been murdered of the characters. And again, I think that just lends itself really well to the pacing because it's not just unfolding like who possibly has violent tendencies, who could possibly be the murderer, but there's also quite a bit of time where you're kind of not sure who's even been murdered. They don't necessarily talk about it explicitly for a little while. Again, I think that that keeps the pacing really even, and I think that as a reader that keeps you really interested. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about the actual plot. Basically, this is a group of old friends who've been friends since Oxford, some of them even longer, but it's a group of friends who get together for New Year's kind of celebration, like a New Year's holiday at this really remote hunting lodge in Scotland. And I think the closest town is meant to be Fort William, so it's in that like Highland region, very rural, and there's like a big mountain and a loch, so it's very like kind of harsh with the elements. It's the middle of winter, so they're all there together. There's definitely tensions and weird relationships, similar to The Guest List, but in my opinion, this feels a little bit more like realistic, I guess, and a little bit less messy. I kind of felt like in The Guest List, some of the interpersonal relationships seemed a little bit too like, it just felt a little bit more out there versus The Hunting Party, which felt just a little bit more realistic. This follows 5 different point of view characters for different chapters. So each chapter is a different point of view. It follows 3 people, 3 of the guests who are staying at the lodge, and then 2 people who work there. One is the gamekeeper Doug, the other is Heather, who like runs the office kind of, I guess, and stuff. And they have their own like demons and backstories that are really interesting. I actually really like the way that she built the tension with revealing Doug's backstory. It was really interesting. I like the way she did that a lot. The 3 characters from the party itself that we follow are Miranda, who is like a really beautiful woman, and her best friend Katie. They've been best friends since they were like 11 or 12. Then also Miranda's kind of newer friend Emma, who's a little bit newer to their friend group. She's dating one of the guys who's been in their group for a while, Mark. And this guy Mark also has had kind of a long-standing crush on Miranda. So there's definitely a bunch of weird kind of and awkward interpersonal relationships, as often happens with a group dynamic like that, especially from like those young adult college days, because as the book definitely addresses pretty explicitly, a lot of times you feel like even though you grow as an adult since that time, when you stay in a group with those people from that time period in your life, you're almost like frozen in a state of like arrested development, sort of, where you like can't be like yourself who's progressed. Like you've changed and grown as a human, but you kind of are stuck in your like mold. You're part of this group to make the group dynamic work, so that can't necessarily always be expressed. And that is why I think this book is so much better than The Guest List. It has that extra element of the idea of growing as an adult from when you were like a young adult. Obviously, we don't usually say the same that we were at like 19 years old. And this really kind of addresses how that can upset group dynamics. Obviously, usually there's not like a murder involved, but it definitely is just a really interesting look at that aspect. I myself have definitely dealt with that, where I've like grown a lot as a human and a person, as an adult, but if I'm with friends of mine from when I was 18 or 19, I sort of feel like I have to be my 19-year-old self again, which just isn't who I am anymore. So yeah, I really like that aspect. I think that lends this book a little bit of depth. That combined with all of the interpersonal relationships, it definitely makes it an interesting mystery read. I also really like, as I mentioned before, and same thing with the guest list, I love the landscape and the harshness and the remoteness of it, because not only are the descriptions just absolutely beautiful, it makes the story itself a little bit more eerie, because when you're in that harsh and remote environment, anything happening feels definitely a lot more intense. And especially if you're not used to living or existing in a place like that, it definitely feels a lot more intense. But anyway, back to kind of the plot. These friends are all gathered together for a holiday together. They try to get together at least like once or twice a year, all of them. And this is kind of their time to get together. Emma, the new girl, the girlfriend of Mark, has been the one who set it all up. She's really excited to be a part of the group. And basically, tensions really start to get high. At first, everybody's really happy to see each other, and they get back into the groove of like how things were, like no time has really passed. But there's a couple, Samira and Giles, who have like just had a new baby, so they're definitely acting really different. And I've noticed that Miranda, who is like one of the point of view characters, she gets really annoyed by people acting different. She seems like a person who just doesn't like the growth or the change happening in people that she relies on to be a certain way. So she's definitely annoyed with Samira and Giles, and also annoyed because they have a baby and she's trying to get pregnant. But yeah, so Miranda is kind of like the really beautiful one who seems to be the life of the party, the center of the group. She's married to Julian, who she met at Oxford, who's also like a really beautiful human. And her best friend Katie, who has been her best friend for like 20 years, is kind of a little bit more plain, I guess, but I don't even know if that's like a right way to say it, but definitely she's not as perfect seeming as Miranda. Miranda's got like a long sheet of blonde hair, like a perfect body. She's like thin with like huge breasts and everything. It's really interesting just to see like some of the friendship dynamics and how those play into some of their actions that aren't even necessarily completely related to the murder mystery. I didn't write any notes for this video, so sorry, this is probably kind of a mess. Some high points that I really enjoyed in this book were Doug's reveal of kind of like his backstory and his history and why he is working at such a remote and harsh place as this lodge. I really enjoyed Doug and his backstory. I really thought that the Miranda point of view chapters were brutal. Her point of view was like pretty intense, but I did kind of enjoy reading them. I really like this author because I think she excels in her descriptions, especially her descriptions of landscapes and how she uses that to convey like the harshness and the animalistic nature of humans. So I really enjoy the way she seems to use those harsh landscapes for that reason. I do know that she's coming out with another book next year that I'm very excited about that actually doesn't take place in like a random place in the middle of nowhere. It's called The Paris Apartment, so I guess it takes place in Paris is what I'm assuming. So I'm also intrigued to see this style and the way she like writes these mysteries translated into like a city setting and how that'll work, because I think it'll be good to shake up the formula a little bit, so to speak. But as far as the formula goes, I think that this definitely did a much better job than the guest list. I think it hit the nail way more on the head. Yeah, okay, spoiler alert. If you want to read this book, skip over this section. Miranda is the one who is killed. Emma is the one who kills her. And there's a great reveal because the whole time Miranda's talking about a stalker that she has, and it turns out that the stalker was Emma, up until basically she like made friends with the group and got in by dating Mark, and then she could just be obsessed with her up close. And I will say I actually called this twist. I called it pretty early on, but I liked it. It was a pretty good ending. Back to spoiler-free programming. I would definitely recommend this if you like other Lucy Foley books or if you like the guest list. I think it just does it better. I don't think I have a ton more to say about this. Probably same complaints as the guest list, is that some of it could read as like a little bit melodramatic, but I mean, that's fine. It's kind of natural if you're trying to depict messy interpersonal relationships that it will come off a little bit melodramatic, so that's what it is. Not a ton of more complaints though. I am interested to read more by this author because I just think they're like kind of fun little mysteries. I love the setting and the landscape, and yeah, looking forward to seeing her write from a more city perspective. But that's probably gonna be it for this video. Please let me know if you've read this book, what you thought of it below, and like, subscribe. Thank you for watching. I will see you later.